Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking you for your patience this afternoon. We're all here to discuss the capture of two wanted individuals. Please hold questioning until later. Let me start off by giving you some background on this case. Today, two Candyville police officers made the arrest of Mr. Joey Milky Way Smith and his accomplice, Jimmy Chocolate Bars Jones. Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones, as you know, have been sought after for many months, suspected of holding up several sugar banks in the area. Last night, officers saw Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones hanging around outside of the First National Sugar Bank. They were looking around and acting very suspicious. Both officers felt they might be planning another heist, and due to their experience, had reasonable suspicion that they were up to no good. They stopped and frisked both gentlemen looking for weapons, keeping in mind officer safety. That was the key to this case. Well, both Milky Way Smith and Chocolate Bars Jones were in possession of automatic water guns, fully loaded with several rounds of Kool-Aid concoction. They also found plans for the bank's alarms and a getaway car around the back of the bank. They were both possibly planning a heist, and all those pieces showed. They were taken downtown and booked under conspiracy to commit sugar bank robbery and possibly plastering the patrons with the sticky Kool-Aid concoction, which, as you all know, could stick a person to a wall for many days. I commend these officers for the fine jobs that they did. Now, I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time, one at a time, please. Ms. Starburst, go ahead. Your question was, why were these officers able to stop and search these subjects? Let me clarify, this was not a search. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution prohibits unreasonable search or seizures. This action fell under the Terry Act, the stop and frisk law. Mr. P.D. Cups, go ahead. Who is Terry and what is the stop and frisk law? Well, that's an excellent question. Back in 1963, on Halloween as a coincidence to this case, two men, Mr. John Terry and Richard Chilton, were acting, well, kind of like our two delightfully sweet guys today. A little bit suspicious, walking back and forth in front of a store, looking in the windows, just acting really weird. This was back in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken. Well, an undercover detective, McFadden was his name, Martin McFadden. He saw Terry and Chilton, and there was another man there, I believe his name was Katz. Well, they were sure up to no good based on his experience. McFadden was well known as a good detective. Well, he went over to them and approached them and started patting them on the outside of their wrappers, looking for weapons. Again, he was trying to be safe and protect himself. Well, just like we did, he found that they both were carrying revolvers. Not as deadly as the weapons our guys were carrying, but still bad things. Well, McFadden arrested both of these hoodlums, and they were charged with carrying concealed weapons. Any reasonable person would have considered that Terry was armed and a threat to his safety based on their experience. The events Detective McFadden had witnessed made it reasonable for him to believe that either Terry or his cohort was armed. They were loitering, they were prowling, and they were known to be criminals. Well, in 1968, Terry argued that his Fourth Amendment rights were violated. The decision of the Supreme Court held that the Fourth Amendment prohibition on unreasonable searches and seizures is not violated when a police officer stops a suspect on the streets and frisks him for weapons. The suspicion that he is had committed, or is planning to commit a crime has to do with reasonable suspicion. Now, if that officer feels that this person might be armed and dangerous, under that reasonable suspicion, they have the right to stop and frisk this person, again, outside their wrappers, so that they can safely proceed with their investigation. Again, they're just searching for weapons. Miss Skittles, go ahead. Are the officers allowed to search for anything else under the Terry Act? No. Safety is the main concern. When they're doing a stop and frisk, they're only looking for weapons. And this must be articulated. It can't just be a hunch. They can't just guess that they might be armed. We all know how many people can't carry candy bars in their pockets. That could look like a weapon, but you have to have a reasonable suspicion that they're going to commit a crime, had committed a crime, or were thinking about committing a crime before you can do your search. Are there other questions? Mr. Kit Kats, what can I do for you? What is reasonable suspicion? Great question. That is a term used to describe if a person has been or will be involved in a crime, or if there is reason to justify a stop. Reasonable suspicion is more than a hunch. Remember, it's got to be based on specific facts. Reasonable suspicion has to do with not a hunch, but reasonable fact that a crime has been, will be, or is planning to be committed. Mr. Mars, what is probable cause? Well, that's a good question as well. In order to make an arrest, you must have probable cause. That differs from reasonable suspicion. Probable cause is sufficient reason based upon known facts to believe a crime has been committed or certain property is connected with a crime. These known facts, again, it needs to be articulated before an arrest can be made. All right, I have time for one more question. Anybody? Any more? Miss Hershey's, what can I do for you? What important facts came out of Terry versus Ohio? Well, in Terry versus Ohio, the Supreme Court said it would be unreasonable to require that police officers take unnecessary risks when they are in the performance of their duties. This law allows officers to protect themselves as well as folks such as yourselves by being able to look for weapons before they can be used criminally. Again, let me stress, this was not a search. Like in Terry versus Ohio, they were patting down for weapons on the outside of their wrappers. Their Fourth Amendment rights remain intact. Are there any other questions? Well, I appreciate you all coming by. That is all the time we have. I hope we'll see everybody tonight at the 9th Annual Chocoholic Festival. Get there early. I hear the Hershey's Kisses booth always has a long line. Thank you.